generative AI, that is a tool that makes it harder to differentiate between fact and fiction. And if you think about humanity's greatest flaw, it's our inability to differentiate between fact and fiction. Like, that's what's led us to war, to genocide, to famine, to all these awful things, because it's so easy for us to believe things that aren't true and that are harmful, and that spirals out of control. And so if we've invented a technology that makes it harder to differentiate between fact and fiction, then we know what the outcome's going to be.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Virtue and Virtuosity with me, Stuart McSkimming. What you just heard was a clip from the upcoming interview we have with Stephanie Antonian. Now, this episode is a big step back. We're not in the weeds of CRM deployments or case studies and pilots. Instead, we've stepped right out to the cutting edge of AI and ethics, where the future might land us and what role charities can play in it. Today's episode is definitely one to listen to without distractions. So sit back for the next 40 minutes, chuckle as I try to keep up, and listen to some thought-provoking content that will really make you think twice about the role of charity. Hello, and today I'm joined by Stephanie Antonian, who has a background in, well, lots of things, really. She's the founder of an AI company. She's worked in consultancy, in big tech, in AI, and she even has some background in religion. Stephanie, it's absolutely fantastic to have you on here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I didn't do a very good job of explaining your background there. Maybe you can tell me just a little bit about your background in AI, or that you're more generally.
Okay, great. It was a bit of a wobbly one, so that's why it's not so easy. But I started my career in the classical way of management consulting with Accenture, and then pivoted to data privacy and went to get my master's in it. But by the time I'd graduated, it was already AI ethics. And so went to DeepMind to help them set up their ethics and policy team, and didn't like it. So left, ended up at Google X, the Moonshot Factory, the wacky bit with driverless cars and stratospheric balloons. And that was amazing. And when I was there, I started looking more about the meaning of life, I guess, and the purpose of it all and what we're doing, and started looking at love and forgiveness and mercy and grace and all those things, and set up my own business to start looking at how we could use AI to help us achieve those goals. So that's where I am now. That's Aestora, and I write about AI and design products for human flourishing.
Wow. So that's quite a background. It's quite a different background to lots of the people I have on the podcast. I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about here, but I'll tell you, I'm slightly nervous because last time I did one all around ethics in AI, I was almost outside of my comfort zone in terms of my core topic is really good on technology and enablement, but it gets really exciting when you talk about the future and the big picture around AI and ethics and what it could or couldn't be doing. The first thing actually when we chatted was the speed that everything's moving at. And because you've worked in a few places and you're part of DeepMind, you've been there, you've seen some of the things that have been happening in the past, a few years.
Mhm.
But I guess, who is AI really serving right now? What is the future there? What should we be worried about?
Okay, that's a good question, but I just want to circle to your earlier point about ethics being, overly sophisticated
Mm.
and confusing and
Yeah, go on.
complex. And that's not that shouldn't be the case. Like, ethics is about how you live well, and everybody has an opinion on how they live well, and it's something everyone can contribute to. And so I think when the conversation gets as confusing as it is, we lose sight of what it was all about, and we can't talk about kindness and camaraderie and community in simple terms, because these are simple things, because we're scaring everybody away. And so I'm like, firstly, no, don't put yourself down like that. If the conversation is too overwhelming, then it's wrong and it's lost the point. So it should be a very simple conversation where everybody, especially people who are focused on helping each other and building communities, has a place to share their views. So firstly on that, and then
Thank you for that, Stephanie. That was really helpful because that's exactly where and there's so many people in the charity sector, they got into it because they're there because they want to make the world a better place, which is a great place to start from.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we want to make the world a better place. Is AI serving us in this world?
Yeah, yeah. So back to the question then. To me, I sort of think AI is not really serving anybody now. I think we've built it on a really weird paradigm. And I'll start by saying it's not really serving the businesses. I mean, they're not making any money from this. In fact, they're losing a lot of money. So like OpenAI lost 5 billion last year and projected to lose 13 billion this year. And so it's coming at a really big cost to business. Ed Zitron writes about this very, very well. So I'd recommend anyone check his stuff out. And then it's also not coming at a very good cost to society. So in, the last 10 years well, I can't believe it's been 10 years, but in the last 10 years I've worked on this, life expectancy's gone down, literacy rates have gone down, homelessness is increasing, poverty's increasing. So, like, this new age of intelligence isn't bringing good business and it's not bringing good results. It's imploding the environment. And so I can't really see who it's serving at all in this moment. And it doesn't mean that it can't serve people, but it would mean that it would take a fundamental paradigm shift of how we're even imagining this to get to a place of actual benefit.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate slightly here and say,
Mhm.
well, maybe just give it a bit more time. I like to see the best in people. I like to see the best in AI. So it's still quite new. Things have developed a lot in the last few years. Maybe OpenAI AI will be making a profit in the future. I don't know too much on the detail on this, but guessing the reason is because they're investing for the future and they've worked out that they get their products out there and work out how to monetize it properly later. It's
Mm,
a typical thing that people do in the technology space, get everyone using it, and then the monetization follows.
mm. I mean, I'm sure that's the idea, but the question is, how much would you pay? I mean, I use ChatGPT to write emails sometimes, but if you ask me to pay $20 a month, even I wouldn't do that because I can write that email. I'm just being really lazy. So my willingness to pay for it is actually nothing. But if you start saying that the cost is one, two, three, four, 500 a month, then I'm totally out. So we don't actually know what the cost is, but what we know is that 200 a month doesn't cover it. They're quite big costs. And then you have the challenge on, it sort of depends on a monopoly then, because as soon as you have something like DeepSeek coming out that's then free, you have to find a way to stop everybody who is willing to pay 200, $300 a month go there. So it's a really irrational business proposal. And they're not irrational people, so there has to be another benefit. There has to be some other big um, goal. And to me, I think the goal is to be the single source of truth and to bring people back into a world where they have one censored source of truth.
So just rewinding slightly there. So I think what we're saying here is the world is a lot of people have made a big bet on AI, but
Yeah,
a lot of money's gone in there.
yeah,
But at the moment, we're not serving anyone because we're not even serving the people who've made the
no,
bet because
exactly.
they haven't cashed in their chips
No,
and made the money. But at some point in the future, they are hoping to. But you're
yeah.
saying actually, perhaps rather than thinking about it being a way to generate a large amount of money for the people who've made the big bet, maybe what we should be thinking about is it should be in service of humanity and it should be serving the broader interests in some way, that we should be looking for something more from it than just money.
Yeah. Well, so that's twofold. So it's like understanding that there's other ways to make money than asking you to pay for a product. So where the big money might come in is through advertising. So you have one single source of truth and you can't tell if it's um, an advert or not. And the willingness to pay for that is really big because you have a global audience and you consolidate people's focus. So there's other ways to make money from this. that we see in the technology sector using. So it's not so there are other ways. If you had everybody looking at your platform and it was telling you what is and what isn't, there's lots of ways to profit from that. And it might just not be the simple solution of asking people to pay. It might be asking those parties that are interested in there being a single source of truth, which might be governments or businesses, to pay enormous amounts. And that's how you could recover it. So there is value. It's just not in the way we're discussing. But then on the other side, on the making it good for humans, what this is really doing is bringing us back to the conversations of what does it mean to be human and what are our flaws and what are our virtues and um, are we operating within that? And generative AI, which is sort of the tech we describe with AI, that is a tool that makes it harder to differentiate between fact and fiction. And if you think about humanity's greatest flaw, it's our inability to differentiate between fact and fiction. Like that's what's led us to war, to genocide, to famine, to all these awful things, because it's so easy for us to believe things that aren't true and that are harmful, and that spirals out of control. That's our greatest flaw. And so if we've invented a technology that makes it harder to differentiate between fact and fiction, then we know what the outcome's going to be. Like, we know it's going to be more war and more suffering because that's playing to our weaknesses. It's not playing to our strengths. And so what I've been looking at is, okay, yeah, that's not great. Like that's never going to end well. But if we have this technology that's created, how do we get it to move towards our virtues? Like, how do you get it to move towards the very best of humanity and the things that aren't based so much on, misinformation, disinformation, but on emotion and care and love and consideration and those things. It is technology that is specifically designed to exploit our weaknesses, and we can't lose sight of that.
There's a lot you said in there, and I'm gonna pull together 2 or 3 things. You talked
Yeah,
about single source of truth, and you talked
yeah.
about there's a problem that humanity tends to believe things far too easily. Is there a challenge here that AI could find itself, I don't want to say this out loud,
Mm.
but I'm gonna say that AI could find itself in some sort of God role. So you've explained the challenges around you want it should be a single source of truth, but the problem is if it's telling us nonsense, we would believe it, and also if it's becoming very influential in our world. A lot of the things you're describing there sound like religion.
Yeah. I mean, I think we also have to be very honest that the conversations happening in Silicon Valley are religious, that AI is being presented as a god and as this third person in the narrative. So, God is such a loaded term that you can think of it as just your framework for the unknown, the best framework for managing the unknown you can come up with at the time. And there have been times in society where people in power have invoked a third person, a god, to justify certain actions and movements and to get people to become less powerful. And that's what we are seeing now. It's this third person narrative of this third person who needs to be involved in everything and needs to be allowed to be the center of your creativity, the center of your mind, the center of your decisions. And that is a framework for the unknown, and that is a god. And they are not shy of talking about how they want to create a god and how this is a religion and it's transhumanism and there is this enlightenment that is going to come from it. And so it would be very strange if you were very pro AI to not pay attention to the conversations that tech is having about this being a god, because it's everywhere. It's a religion. Like, the conversation right now is not based on science, it's not based on technology. We're not talking about the capabilities that actually exist. Right now we have these tools that predict the most probable outcomes. They don't know truth, they don't know reason, they can't follow logic. We don't have any actual evidence that this can exist at all. but we are having a conversation purely based on faith that something big is going to come and save us. Like it's religion.
And I guess a lot of people are buying into this because literally everywhere I look, AI is. I mean, I don't know if this is just because of the industry I'm in, but everything I look at on the internet feeds me things all about what AI isn't or isn't doing, and I see it on the news and I see it in the press. And what you just said there about there's not much science in here, um,
No, yeah,
that's fascinating for me because initially, of course, I think no, AI is all around science and technology.
yeah,
It's being led by that, but you're right. But so much of our understanding of what it can and can't do is all around belief because we don't understand
exactly.
it.
Exactly. And this is not a conversation about science or technology. In fact, if you believe in AGI, if you believe in superintelligence, you are rejecting chaos theory. You're rejecting quantum. Like you're rejecting lots of scientific principles and you're saying, do you know what? There is an ultimate truth and it can be found. Okay, that's God. That's fine, but that's God. Yeah. And then you're also saying, and when it's found, there might be damnation. And it's like, okay, well, welcome to Christianity. Like, um, and I think it's very normal because we get caught up. It's very normal in transitioning social structures because every empire uses religious narratives to consolidate wealth. And so right now we're in a time of hysteria where people are speaking with real religious fervor about this technology that does not exist and that there is no proof ever could exist and how it's going to come and change everything. And meanwhile, wealth is consolidating from the masses to the few in the middle of all this. And I was writing something that I never put up, but about how it's like, the Roman Empire, when that died, it became the Catholic Church. And it's, AI is following on with the same tactics of a narrative of fear and shame while wealth is being consolidated. And that's not to criticize Catholic Church. I grew up Catholic, but it's just the structure of the institution was very able with a narrative to consolidate wealth. And when you look at it at that level, you see the same thing happening. It's this big religious narrative, and it's similar to um, the Judeo-Christian religion. So it's similar to what we understand, one God, ultimate truth, like damnation, but it's a little bit different. So you can get atheists reinvigorated in it, and you can use the same mechanisms to siphon money into one central source.
So,
I'm laughing because I do understand that what I'm saying is quite loaded, but it's the wealth
it
consolidation story.
I'm trying to think then the role of charity. So I'm gonna bring this all around. But you've talked a big story there all around. We've talked all around how there's a potential that AI could be seen as some sort of religious type movement. But charities typically have taken a role in a lot of the things we've talked about there in terms of trying to help people in vulnerable situations and trying to do good in the world, trying to make the world a better place. And some of the things that have happened very recently, if you go to Google now and you search for things, we went through having an AI overview, and now actually it will actually just give you an AI answer. You can turn that
Mhm,
on just quite recently. And lots of charities, I think, are a bit concerned, and lots of organizations more broadly I've seen in the various different chat groups. I mean, there's a concern that things like this will take people away from the
mhm,
organizations who are giving out that information, and people will instead just get that information from AI, from Google. And so rather than, I don't know, if I want to find out something all about what's going on with, I don't know, with children in Southern Africa and poverty or something like that, rather than getting the answer from a verified source of truth, something that's trustworthy, that's on the ground, that's doing the job. Save the Children do a lot of work in that area, for example. Rather than getting information from Save the Children, I will get it from AI instead.
mhm.
And that surely puts us in a dangerous place. And charities have things they could be doing there that should be trying to ensure that their messaging and the good information that's well researched and well understood and accurate is getting out there.
Yeah, and that speaks to the earlier point that I was saying, that this is a goal in a single source of truth, and that the way that they might profit from this and get their investments back might be to say, you will never appear in that unless you pay. So yeah, it's not going to happen. Like it's not, you're not going to be able to access people in the same way without this new gateway, and without making friends with this decision making God. That's that is specifically what's happening. That's the cost of what we're seeing. And so
Ah,
that's the world we're moving to. They're
and
all
and
tied together. They won't, if other people are willing to pay, if other charities or governments who do not support the charities are willing to pay to own that summary, that is the state that we will live in. That's why this does require some bigger conversation, because to me that's not intelligence. And that is stupidity. Like moving to a summary that can be bought by whoever is not progress to me. And it's a sobering conversation, but it's one that needs to happen, because if you are a charity, like you can't on the one hand offer free R&D to big tech to find a way to force the AI into your organization, and then be surprised that the same technology pushes you out and makes you weaker in the end, because that's the model, that's the game plan, that's what's already been shown.
And have you seen evidence that people are people is there work going on this? So this is an interesting podcast topic, but are people actually tackling this problem? Is everything moving too fast? Because so this is one of the things that where you said there's a lack of science. One of the things I've noticed is that there's so much information out there. It's really difficult for people to understand
Mm.
where we're heading, what the future will actually look like, what they should actually be doing to try and influence that future, and how they can actually do things. And so, have you seen any evidence that people are starting to grasp this version of the reality that could happen in the future?
Okay, that's a really good question. So there are people who are working on this, but I think we have to remember that a lot of our media comes from big tech. So most of what you're reading is propaganda, and it has an incentive, and it's geared towards wealth and power consolidation. And so where people are stepping out of this is it's really quite a countercultural movement, and it's really growing. And I constantly meet more and more people who are looking at this and changing their perspectives, and focusing on community, and opting out of this narrative, and not to argue against it, but just to pick something else. But it's countercultural. So yes, there's lots of people working it, but you won't read it on LinkedIn, and you won't see it, um, on Twitter or on X. Like it's a different community that's leaning out, and I think there's a lot here that I'm saying that's very scary, and the instinct is to fight against it. But one of the things that I have come to terms with is that I don't want to fight against it. I just don't want to participate. Like I want a life that's loving and that's easy, and that's focused on community, and that's focused on all these great things. I want to put all of my energy into creating that world, into caring for other people, into building this nicer future. And that has been more valuable to me. And it's not that I you don't see what's going on, but it's that I understand if I really argue against it, I'm still making it more powerful. And the entire conversation on AI in the public is totally um it's framed, it's set up. Like you can't have any there is no debate in AI happening. It's all fake. So for example, um is AI going to be great or is it going to be awful? Both of those assume AI is going to happen. Like you don't get to say maybe AI is going to be nothing. I was like, you don't even have the opportunity to talk about that, or even oh, what is a fair price that people should be paid for AI? Like, or no one should be paid for AI. But both of those assume that it's okay for you to work for AI. Like, we don't, that there, it is set up to make it seem like we're debating AI, but we're not. We're just keeping the system going and perpetuating it. And so to really debate and take a stand, you sort of have to lean out to say, this doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, you don't have to use AI. You don't have to love AI. No one even knows if it's any good. Like, you can wait. You could even just wait to see, did another charity find out a good way to use it? What's the privacy like? What are the legal issues? Like, you don't need to be in R&D doing that yourself. Like, you can wait to see what everybody else does, because even Harvard Business Review had put out something, say 80% of all AI projects are going to fail.
So it's something I can grasp onto, and I think that's something that's really important, is that in the commercial world, if I don't know, if I'm selling cars or something like that, I might want to be investing in AI because I'm worried that there'll be a competitor who'll get ahead of me and I'll be put out of
Yeah.
business. But in the charitable world, things are quite different, because there's raising income, there's doing good for your beneficiaries, and there's maybe being efficient or something like that. And you can decide you could use AI for any of those things. But none of them, I mean, fundraising is the only area where you might say you're competing with other charities or some to get, but none of them are really in competition. And so when you say there is no competition there between charities, which most
Mm.
people who worked in the charity sector realize, it's quite a charities work quite well together. There's an ecosystem, people work together, and there isn't competition. And so if there is no competition, you're totally right. There is no urgency to be jumping in
Yeah.
and doing things, and that in a world where everything is moving very, very, very quickly, there's
Take
a
a breath.
strong case.
Yeah.
There's a strong case for saying, let's just take a step back, see what
Yeah.
happens, save our
Yeah.
money, but don't spend it all now. Let's let things settle down and see what happens.
Yeah, because, and even in that business example with the car, it's like AI might be your kiss of death. That might be the thing that makes you lose. Like, a lot of companies that fired loads of people to replace it with AI, like Klarna, have now had to admit that that totally has messed up their business. Now they need to hire people back. So that makes you look silly. What I see car makers trying to use AI all the time and promote it, but what does AI have to do with cars? Like, that's, I'm just, you know, just as someone who, I can't drive, yeah, but as someone who goes in cars, I'd rather there not be ChatGPT linked to it. Okay, rather the driver focus on the road. But so it's like you don't actually know that it's not the investment that's going to really make you lose. And that's what I think we're seeing is like a lot of people who've jumped on this in businesses, a lot of people who've jumped on, I need to invest in AI, I need to invest in AI, have just increased their costs massively, broken a lot of what has already existed, especially consumer trust, and are actually suffering from it. So, like, it's not, even in the world of competition, it's not necessarily good. It can be incredibly destructive. Um, and if it's not competitive, then yeah, I mean, there really is no reason to have any urgency, in it. Um,
And I think so, which I think is a really good grounding point. Take a deep breath. We would all be wise to actually take a deep breath, take a step back. And when you at one point you said there's a hysteria, we're all jumping on the AI bandwagon. We're all like, okay, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, but nobody knows what it's going to do.
yeah, nobody knows what it's going to do, but we do know exactly what it can't do. So it cannot reason, it cannot determine truth, it cannot recognize accuracy. We know that this tech in this format can't do any of those things. So, yeah, we don't know what the value of everybody being able to rob Studio Ghibli is. I don't know. Like, um, we don't know those things, but we do know the limitations, the technical limitations, and just you can't turn averages into accuracy. That's just the basics. So we know that stuff won't happen. Um, and I think in the charity sector, it's like what you also know is that the the reason why charities exist has nothing to do with intelligence. It's all to do with stupidity, really. Like we let people live on the streets when there's empty houses. Like, we let people starve when there's food going to waste. We create stories like supply and demand that totally do not account for humans or, starvation or homelessness at all. And we built society on this model as if doing that is intelligence, like allowing all these things to happen is intelligence. And so any technology that is trained on the idea that these norms are okay is not going to help you because charities are not about what's probable. It's about what's possible. It's about what should be. It's about what could be. It's about the emotions of why we don't do these things that and why we behave in ways that are so harmful. And so for the broader mission of the charity, I don't know what these tools have anything to do with because it's precisely the averages that have got us into this mess. Like, it's precisely this nonsense that have facilitated people to think that this stuff is okay. And charities, they take a stand against that. And so I don't quite see the overarching ideological fit between charities and the products that have been invented. I understand the ideological fit between charities and the story of products that we've not yet created at all and have no idea how to do that. But in terms of what's being created, it's the opposite. It's not relevant to charities.
So, taking all of the things you're saying there, adding together, there's a large amount of money being invested, but this is mostly being gambled because we don't know if the bet is going to pay off. There's a lot of belief in the future about what AI can do, but with a very little science behind it. There's, as we said, there's almost a hysteria, and our
Mm.
opinions are being shaped very much by big tech because that's where a lot of us get our news. I know my kids get more of their news from social media. They don't sit down at 10 o'clock and watch the news. So there's a whole load of things going on there. The lack of the ability to understand right from wrong and to identify what is true in AI. Now you add all of that together,
Mhm.
and we've seen that this in the past in human history, and this generally doesn't end well. It ends in some sort of revolution or
Mhm.
people fighting back in some way. Somewhere in the middle, you said you wanted to choose to not fight back. You wanted to just choose to embrace positivity, basically. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but you were like, I don't want the negativity of fighting against this. I want positivity of choosing something else instead of just doing that. Where do you think we'll end up then? Are we into a situation where where there's a danger of us all revolting against in this future, or do you think we will take a positive path?
Well, I think the positive path is revolution. So we know the peaceful way to end colonialism, and that's to follow Gandhi's path. And to choose the path of love. And what, new systems always do is they crush people's self-esteem and they make them think they're not smart enough, they're not good enough. Like the Roman Empire, like it was all innovation and superiority. And the same with the British Empire. You'll get this better way of living and you're nothing. And it crushes self-esteem. And so, one of the biggest things that people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King have said is that the way you really revolt is that you bring people's self esteem up and you remind them who they are and what this power is trying to do to make them smaller. And so, to me, the only revolution is to lean out and rise up yourself. And that is what causes change. Like, I think it's inevitable we'll go to revolution. Even with these conversations about unemployment and it's like all said to scare everybody. And it's like, oh, unemployment's rising. Like, you're going to be unemployed. It's like, well, what happens in society when huge groups of people, especially young men, are unemployed? They revolt. So I'm like, that really, to me, is a you problem, not like an us problem. And so I think revolt is inevitable, and it's really what that movement could look like. Because it doesn't need to be aggressive. Everyone could turn off their phones for a day, or you could overload ChatGPT, just rise those costs up enormously. Like there's a million things people could do, but it starts with decoupling from the narrative that is pushing fear and shame and scarcity and anxiety, because that's what keeps you weak, and reclaiming your own mind and your own center of creativity and your own esteem. And that is a much better revolution. I mean, that, ideally, no one's going to die. That doesn't need to be violent. And we have models for it. We know ways that you end things like colonialism that are not as destructive as war and the past. And that is the path of love. And so to me, it's not quite positivity. So I'm very okay with the negatives, but love is actually quite brutal because it's very boundaried, and it doesn't suffer any fools really. So that's a lot of what I research now and what I'm looking into, like what this sentiment is that is very powerful but not forceful, that rises people up. And one study I was looking at says you only need 3.5% of the population to change their mind and to believe in something else for that shift to occur. And so, yeah, my key takeaways on this are like, take a breath, remember who you are. You're not someone who doesn't understand ethics. Like, you're someone who's dedicated your life to the greater good. Okay, so I do think you do have the right to have an opinion on these things. Yeah, and you've been out there living it. Like, and this is to the audience as well. You've been out there living it constantly, and no one knows these issues more than you. And you can pat yourself on the back for that, and like understand that there's more things that need to be done in that field and stuff, but it's not necessarily through the AI thing, and that's not necessarily a threat that you have to engage with. You can just keep on being you and being at the center of what you're doing.
So, like, as we were going through this, I was thinking, okay, I want to end a podcast on an optimistic note, and I think that is an optimistic note that we all have it. We have seen history. We've seen what happens in the past. We know the peaceful path to get to a better place, and we all just need to make sure that we remain true to ourselves. We remember in our hearts what we are as humans. Remember our humanity.
Exactly, because it's like, so many people are being encouraged to put their faith in AI, and it's like, why would you put your faith in AI? It's just a technology, it can be anything. But the place that I put my faith in is people. Like, I don't think much about AI. I don't think it's great, but I think humans are amazing. I think people are awesome, and we'll turn it around. Like, worst case scenario, we'll turn it around, and we will be stronger for it. But it's people that are incredible, like the people who are out there every day doing things for each other, like, the scout leaders, like the volunteers. Like, there is so much goodness and real intelligence out there in the world, and you can lose sight of it in this conversation because it's so dry and dark. But there is this amazing species called humans that we're all part of, that's so filled with really just shockingly loving attributes. And that's where I put my faith. And that's what keeps this positive for me. And that's where it's easy to be positive if you believe in the power of humanity and you believe in yourself and in each other, because AI is not important in the same way when you have that sight of what it means to be alive and to be living here.
So charities shouldn't forget about their volunteers. All of I mean, it's often about staff, but here you've got so many charities have thousands or tens of thousands of volunteers involved in them. If you keep that volunteer, that humanity at the heart of what you're doing, it will steer you rather than being driven by the technology and by AI.
Yeah, I mean, because your focus is your, um, the people that you're serving. It's like these are servant leadership organizations, and it's remembering that and not being pushed into under this propaganda to be free R&D for big tech. You're there for the people. And personally, I find the most inspirational things are like when people have gone through awful experiences and have chosen love. That to me is so captivating, and it's just in awe. Like when I read stories about people from war zones or who've experienced abuse and who have found it in their heart to forgive and to move forward in love and to help other people. That is what I find so overwhelmingly incredible. Not a machine that auto completes by hoarding most of the world's wealth and resources to create this magic trick. Like, that's not very interesting to me. But that human capacity to evolve in that way and to make those choices, like that to me is super intelligence. And that's what I hold on to because it just makes my life better. Like, and it has a focus and it has a meaning and it's just incredible. I'm like, charities are filled with stories of incredible people. I don't know if you ever watched the Pride of Britain Awards, but I used to watch it as a child and it was just wow, wow, like that is incredible. Like, that is so intelligent. That's what should be at the forefront. That's what we should be talking about. That's what we should be aspiring to. I don't care about a Studio Ghibli picture of me. I fundamentally just don't care. I don't even care that it can write my emails faster. I shouldn't have to be sending so many stupid emails anyway. But if you really want to invoke awe in me, it's those stories, and they're everywhere. So I do think that reconnecting and focusing on what this is actually all about and who is around you and remembering their stories and also your own. It's not easy to work in charities. It comes at a sacrifice, it comes at a big cost. And that has happened from love and from care. And those are skills that most people don't, or not most people, actually, most people do have it, but that people don't get rewarded for in the way that they probably should, or in the way that in an intelligent world we would recognize.
Okay. I'm not even going to summarize because normally at the end I say back what someone's
Yeah.
just because you said it way better than I would say it. There's loads in there. Hopefully for anyone listening to this has been like a cold shower to wake people up and to make people think in a different way. Stephanie, I've absolutely loved that. It's been really fascinating chatting to you. We've run out of time now, but thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.